Greetings, salutations, I don't know, whatever dumb intro Jake does. I've always kind of hated that intro. This is Query and Schultz here on the ISC Sports Network. Obviously, Jake is not here, so I am the one that is in the controls, but we have somebody who is a very familiar face, a familiar voice for sure, and really a familiar presence on this show every week because you'll see it when they pull it up here. The little screen on the bottom, all the text that's in there, a lot of people have asked me, hey, Schultz, who's typing that? Like, who is that? It's not some spirit or, Oz behind the curtain. It's Greg Rakestraw, who is filling in for Jake today as Jake is overseas. And I guess I should ask you, Greg, because you're the vice president of the ISC Sports Network, and we have this deal with you guys on this network to present Query and Schultz every single week. Jake's now missed 2 shows in the span of a month. We're reaching him getting his pay docked, right? We're reaching that point now?
I think I'm comfortable in us making that decision with him being like 6 hours away and not being actually on the continent to defend himself. So if you simply want to take some of his pay home for this week's show, I'm perfectly fine with that.
Yeah, or let's just go halfsies.
Cool.
We'll give a little bit, yeah,
Done.
right? Give a little bit, get a little bit.
Which is even more funny because we're actually both on salary on the ISC Sports Network too. So we're just double dipping like crazy on the show today.
Dip into the coffers a little bit more there. Look, we've got a lot to talk about today, obviously, as we always do on this show. It feels hard to jam everything into an hour 20, but another disappointing performance, I would say, for the Colts as they fall to Washington. And yes, the Commanders are technically 4-4, but kind of looking at the Colts as well as a 500 team, they don't really feel like a 500 team. They seem to be a very beatable and mediocre team. And it was right there. I mean, when they took that lead and to make it double digits, Rake, I thought to myself, wow, we're going to be talking about a 4-3-1 football team on a team with a winning record essentially at the halfway point of the season. And instead it goes the other way. And it looks like it's just a season that doesn't appear to be ever going to come off the ground for the Colts this year.
No, that was snatching defeat from the jaws of victory last night for that football team. And it was an effort by the Colts defensively that was phenomenal until the final 2 drives of the game when the Commanders finally tended to get things going. Let's get to the obvious talking point all week long and the news that broke literally as we were driving from the studio last week after having filmed episode 108, and that was that Sam Ehlinger was going to be the new quarterback of the Indianapolis Colts, and not just for this week, but for the remainder of the season. That is the ultimate good news from yesterday's performance. Sam Ehlinger looked the part. Sam Ehlinger was great. He was 17 for 23, 201 yards, and again, the 201 yards, isn't going to be award-winning, but the fact that literally almost every pass he threw was on target. I can go back and tell you, obviously the Michael Pittman drop, the Jonathan Taylor drop on drive number 1 should have been a pass interference, and one of those incompletions to Alec Pierce. Sam Ehlinger looked like he was ready for the moment, and so that's the part that you feel good about. Is he the quarterback of the future, i.e. beyond this year? Dude, it's one game. We haven't gone that far yet, but at least that piece appears to be an improvement. Now it's a matter of finding a way to score more than 16 points. And I wouldn't say a way to close out games because, let's face it, until yesterday, when the Colts have had a chance to win the game in the fourth quarter, they've largely done that. I mean, think about the 3 wins. They've all been of the come-from-behind variety. Yesterday was a new and different way to find a way to lose. And that, to me, is the most challenging part of trying to reconcile how it went from 16-7 to 17-16 in 26 seconds.
It felt like quick. And we'll talk about all of those downsides offensively and the struggles that they had. But let's talk more about Ehlinger because I agree with you. I don't think people realize how difficult it is for essentially a guy in his rookie year. I know this is his second year, a former 6th-rounder who was a roster bubble guy 2 months ago to come in and it felt like he had the command of the offense, which is half the battle right there, right? Of course. Just knowing what to do with it. And I think they did a nice job. Maybe they were a little too conservative with not putting too much on his plate. But I think the big question for him coming out of Texas, he had the intangibles, he had the mobility, he had some things, some NFL traits, but what was not an NFL trait during the scouting process was his arm.
Correct.
And look, I'm not going to pretend like I'm Tom House or anything, but I thought, Greg, that he had a lot of zip on his ball. Not just the accuracy, but I think the strength looks like maybe it's developing and growing a little bit for him.
Well, there's a couple 3 throws that immediately stand out on that. And first of all, it's nice for Colts fans because if you hear Tom House And because of our friendship with Will Carroll, we probably know of or hear more about Tom than, say, the average baseball fan or football fan because of Will's knowledge, inside connections, fascination with the biomechanics of throwing something from a baseball or a football standpoint. And Tom is obviously the one guy that you kind of talk about in terms of both of those. But Colts fans, when you hear Tom House, you probably think of Andrew Luck, and there is a negative connotation. Not that Tom did anything wrong, but that was who you would hear Tom being referenced to. Well, now in Sam Ehlinger, you can see the rapid improvement from last year's preseason and in terms of this year's team. So now let's talk about 3 specific throws. Not the deep ball to Pierce, although that was absolutely on the money, but the ball that he threw kind of going across his body that Pierce made that great diving catch for during the course of the game. The absolute dime that he threw on the seam route to Pittman on the last drive that if Pitt catches that, we're having a bit of a different conversation, I think, about the way that this game unfolded. And to your point, again, was Frank Reich more conservative than he ever has been in a game plan calling it for the Colts because of Sam Ehlinger? Absolutely he was. Do I now think that we will see a little bit more put on Sam's plate going forward because of how he showcased himself? Yes. The big question as the game unfolded, first half everything was short. Everything was quick outs. But as the game went along, more of the deep ball was included. And so I think you'll see that continue to grow for Sam next week and going forward.
And our guy that's replacing you today behind the glass, Sean Walker, is going to hate this because he can't stand Frank Reich. But I'll give this. I know this is new for the show, me, a Frank Reich apologist. I'll give this as a defense of him. And I think being conservative and, the decisions 4th and 2 or 4th and goal at the 2, and you decide to kick the field goal and all of that. I think Frank realizes what all of us are realizing about this team, Rake, and it's that their margin for error is 0.
Yep.
It's 0. And you saw it yesterday where anything bad that happens to this team immediately becomes a catastrophe because they can't overcome it. They're just not good enough to overcome any of the mistakes. And, you have 2 fumbles inside the red zone the way that they did, or the jump ball, it's a 50-50 ball between Gilmore and McLaurin, and McLaurin comes down with it. And if those go the other way, then you're just trying to play catch up, and the Colts just aren't good enough to kind of catch up from that. So I think people are asking, well, why is Reich so different this year? Why is this offense not finding it? I think he's adjusting based on just where this unit is.
Right. And let's go back to it. It's the offensive line. Now,
100%.
Have there been games where Jonathan Taylor should be better? Yeah. Should Matt Ryan have been better? Yeah. What was our biggest question mark coming in? Wide receivers. They appear to be pretty good.
They've been fine, yeah.
Again, with the exception of Pittman's drop yesterday, but he has been the unquestioned one and has played like it, every game that he has been available to this club during the course of the season. Pierce has been great. Now, all of a sudden, Paris Campbell is steady Eddie, having played in 8 consecutive games, something he's never done in the National Football League. He made a great play on a screen yesterday. Obviously had that carry he had 3 touches for 71 yards.
Drew a PI.
Yep. So what we thought was going to be a question mark for this team is the not question mark for this team. But it's the offensive line. They have been better the last 2 weeks. Ehlinger's mobility will make it better the last 2 weeks, going forward. But the plays that didn't work, the play that drew the most ire on the post-game show yesterday was after Michael Pittman was correctly ruled as to not having gotten into the end zone. 3rd and 1, your shotgun, and you hand it off to Jonathan Taylor, and you get stuffed, and you lose so much in the way of yardage that it is, okay, now bring out the field goal unit and kick a 20-yarder. As far as the shotgun is concerned, I look at this on Friday and Saturday and Sundays, and that's how people run their goal line offenses at this point, or their short yardage offense. It's just what you do. Will Sam Ehlinger take more snaps under center this week in terms of practice to have that play ready if needed? I guarantee you he will. I understand with the craziness of making the change in midseason, did you not run that package in practice this week? Probably. I think that's a legitimate cause there. But at the same time, you've got to be able to count on Quentin Nelson, Ryan Kelly, Jonathan Taylor, when you hand him the ball at the 4-yard line, to be able to charge forward and get into the end zone, and it just didn't happen. The offensive line continues to be the single biggest problem with this football team being 3-4-1.
Yeah, and it's tough to watch Quentin Nelson, and we're talking about some of the best players. Danico Autry is not one of the best players in the NFL, but to see him get dunked on as routinely as he's gotten dunked on is strange, because you don't usually see that. And we know about the struggles that Kelly has had, and we know about the struggles that Smith has had. But you're right that week after week, the best you can hope for is that the offensive line isn't completely overwhelmed.
Right.
And that's a really tough standard to try to live up to. But in the NFL, you just can't score 12, 14, 16, 17 points and just pray for it to hold up every week. And that's essentially what the Colts have to do.
Here's the crazy thing is that offenses are seemingly down this year in the National Football
They are.
League.
Yeah, you're right.
So it's not just the Colts. I'm not saying it makes what the Colts are going through okay, but what I thought this team would be going into the season would be, the question would be, is could they get to 27 points? I thought the Colts defense would hold teams to about 20 points a game, which is exactly what they've done, if not better. Mm-hmm. The thought was, hey, could you get to 24 or 27 on a regular basis? And the answer has been no. So even in a year where offenses are down across the board, the Colts are substandard to that. So even though, yes, I know the defense gave up 10 points in the fourth quarter yesterday. I get that. I understand that. If you had told me when the game started, hey, the Commanders will score 17, I like the Colts' chances to win that game, like 2017, 21-17, something along those lines. They made just enough mistakes offensively for that not to happen.
Yeah, I mean, if you go through it, we mentioned the 2 red zone fumbles and then choosing to kick a 20-yard field goal. There's a max output of 21 points there, and you end up with 3.
Right.
Even 9, you win the game.
Yep.
9 points, you win the game, just 3 field goals, and that's the most frustrating thing of all. But, again, it goes back to the original point where you should win a game where you yield 17 points.
At home. Colts, at home, yes.
It's just been so difficult for them. And I'm not saying that the defense is perfect. The pass rush still isn't where it needs to be. And they lack the dynamic. They're not dynamic enough.
There you go. I screw up that word, too.
In taking the ball away. You remember the last couple of years, We've seen this be a great take the ball away, change the game type defense, and it's just not happening for them this year. So while I think this is a good unit, what's stopping it from being a great or a game-changing one is those 2 areas. And if you're not going to be a great elite defense, then scoring 16, 17 points ain't going to work.
I don't have the total number of takeaways through 8 games off the top of my head. I know it's in single digits because it's just not been that many. Folks, last year the Colts averaged 2 turnovers forced per game. 33, I think, was their total number of takeaways through 17 games of the season. This group is nowhere close to that. So I would actually argue this is a more sound and solid defense. Again, they are doing largely a better job than the group did a year ago. However, you're losing that home run playability. Although, as we say that, the Colts' only touchdown yesterday came from Tyquan Lewis with the pass rush, and go figure, Shaquille Leonard finds the ball, the Maniac gets to play, and finally makes a play defensively, though, again, the majority of the credit for that play needs to go to Tyquan Lewis, who now, sadly, not officially, you would certainly assume it is done just for the year with what appears to be another significant lower leg injury.
Carted off. You hate to
and amazingly, Derek, it was the same weekend last year. It was Halloween weekend last year.
Tennessee.
Against the Tennessee Titans. Same end of the field, 364 days later, and he's going through that again.
It's just awful. Then you have to work your way all the way back.
Right.
So you think about Tyquan with that. Colts plus-minus margin 31st in the league, -8.
Literally, and going back to our 950 days, in the old days where everything was, printed out, you would see me on Mondays go to the Colts complex, and I'd get this phone book-like packet of stats, and the lead stat on the first of 50-something pages put out by the National Football League was giveaway takeaway ratio. Yeah. And if you looked at that stat, it almost like was reading the NFL standings. And for all the things we can talk about that have gone wrong with this football team this year, but yet only a half game under 500. If the giveaway takeaway, if they're in the middle of the pack from a giveaway takeaway standpoint, probably talking about a 5-2-1 football team. I'm not sure if they're any good. We're talking about a 5-2-1 football team.
Yeah, tell me if this sounds right. Here's some of the teams' positive differential. Eagles.
7-0.
Ravens.
I think they're 5-2.
Yep.
They're good.
Cowboys,
6-1.
Vikings,
6-1.
Seahawks,
A surprise.
Bills.
Probably the best team in the league.
Randomly, the Texans are in there. They're +3, even though they're terrible.
There are
There are outliers.
Okay, you can't say dynamicism. I can't say statistical. So there we go. So scratch that one.
And then bottom, Colts, as we just mentioned, Saints, Lions, Commanders, the Steelers stink. I don't know if you've watched the Steelers this year. They stink. And then the Rams, who are struggling. I know they're the reigning Super Bowl champions, but they're struggling as well. So, I mean, it's not rocket science.
Giveaway takeaway is the most important stat in football, hands down, and the Colts have not been good at it this year.
By the way, you mentioned those big phone book stat packets. I'm not going to the Colts press box every week like I used to as a credentialed seasoned media member. Do they still come around with the stat sheets?
No.
They finally stopped doing that? Okay.
Yes.
Good, because
there are still plenty of dead trees after any Colts game.
Yeah.
I still have a printed out box score that I use to write down all the callers' names
which I
on
could
the postgame show.
I could see the printed out box score. I mean, they were doing it quarter by quarter.
Yes.
Even in 2019, they were doing that.
Yeah,
and I thought to myself, guys, we don't need to do this anymore.
I sit in a very sequestered PA booth that's me, JJ Stankovitz, and his spotter. And so perhaps in the main press box they still do it, but in the handful of times I sit in the main press box during regular season, I think that answer is no.
We'll save some forests here in Indianapolis by not having to do that. Let's get to our Who's Cooking segment, brought to you by our friends at Lou Malnati's. Order.loumalnati's.com. 4 Indy area locations. Our favorite in Broad Ripple, right in our neck of the woods.
Yep.
Greg and I both live in Midtown. Carmel, across the street from Brebeuf High School, West 86th Street, and Greenwood, and coming soon to Avon. They got to be opening any time now in Avon. They've been working on that for a while now. Delicious deep dish traditional pizza, great thin crust pizza as well. Wings, sides, anything and everything with our friends at Lou Malnati's. You mentioned his name, and just anytime he's on the field, it feels like there's a boost, and it's hard to kind of quantify what that boost is. But my pick, Greg, for Who's Cooking, Shaquille Leonard in the interception and coming back and making an impact right away.
Again, a good pick. He makes a play. I will tell you this, a big part of the reason why the Commanders, and I am so having to focus on not saying their old nickname. So far, I have not had to put anything in the swear jar. I've said Commanders on radio and television every time. But I'll also say this. Shaq was in the wrong place three times on that drive. The one drive he played in the first half, Washington scored a touchdown. So, and again, from that press box view, you can kind of see that. Yes, he made more plays in the second half, which was good to see. But the guy that I'm going to pick for my Who's Cooking player of the game from Lou Malnati's is Grover Stewart.
Yeah,
Grover Stewart, each and every week is delivering. Last week, he had 12 tackles, which is unheard of from the defensive tackle position. Not as many this week. He had 7. He deflected a pass. He completely blew up a screen for a tackle for loss. And I forget whether it was Heineke or it was a running back. Think of the play where he chased somebody down on the Washington sidelines. The biggest guy on the field isn't supposed to do that.
Yeah.
And Big Grove is doing that. And for those that watched Hard Knocks last year, which I was not of that group, my voice was on Hard Knocks. I didn't actually watch the show. Apparently there was a segment of like Grover's Secret Wings on that program, I think, from last year. So legitimately, if somebody on the Colts was likely to be cooking, it would be Grover Stewart. So Grover Stewart is my Who's Cooking player with Lou Malnati's.
It's got to be the best defensive tackle combo in the league, right?
Right, correct.
It's got to be. Both of those guys should be heading to the Pro Bowl, and I wonder at this point, Rake, if we're not talking about Stewart potentially being an all-pro level player. I mean, that's how good he's been through. Again, it's just through the first half of the season. But that's how good he's been. Again, order.loumalnati's.com for our friends at Lou's.
Now, Derek, am I, because I'm filling in for Jake, am I supposed to throw this tomato at you?
Not. You're supposed to be an adult.
So I should sit this down?
You could pick it up. You can give it a little squeeze if you want to.
And we're supposed to
you could toss
because, I'm also one of the sales guys here. I like to show the logo, to the camera. Logo right here. Hi. But then we'll sit it right down and we'll act like adults on the program.
The standard for filling in for Jake is, can you just be an adult? And I am confident that you can be that way. We'll come back with more next. More content here on Corey and Schultz, including going around the rest of the NFL in Week 9. We've got to talk about the Pacers back-to-back big wins. Wow, they look pretty good so far. through 7 games of the year, and their rookie in Bennedict Mathurin is really standing out and playing very well. More features, and most importantly for Rake, our Hoagies and Hops Hoagie and Hero of the Week.
Oh, yeah.
Coming up here in a couple of segments. You're always behind the glass for this. Now you get to actually have the real thing.
I never get to eat on the show. I get to break that streak today.
Query and Schultz, episode 109. Stick around here on the ISC Sports Network.
Nice snap.
Mortgage is a snap. Duh.
Bailey and Wood, a lending hand for Wish TV Sports.
Other universities didn't fit into my life.
They said I'd have to quit my job to go to school.
They said it would take me 4 years to graduate. They said I have to take tests when they tell me to.
They said my degree would cost a fortune.
But I didn't have to listen to them.
Because I have a university that listens to me.
Tests on your time, courses on your time, graduate on your time. WGU, the University of You.
Hey, AC.
Nice snap.
Mortgage is a snap. Duh.
Bailey and Wood, a lending hand for Wish TV Sports.
Greg Rakestraw filling in for Jake Query, who is overseas. I'm Derek Schultz. Thanks so much for joining me.
Should we, because there are certain listeners that have joined the Derek Schultz timeline in, say, 2011. Should we, take a walk down memory lane just for a bit to let people know about, that you and I once hosted a radio show before it was you and Jake?
There are a very small handful of people that probably realize that. Eric Martledge, Greg Poley would be some of those people that I remember from the old 950 days. Yeah, but to kind of lay the groundwork, I mean, Greg and I go back way before ISC Sports Network, back to an interesting year in my life in 2005. Luckily, there's no photographic evidence of me that exists from that time. I've burned all those photos and my Facebook account got wiped. But I was coming back to Bloomington. I had graduated Indiana. And I had decided, okay, I am not ready. I don't want to live with my parents, and I am not ready to start whatever my career was. So I've got this job at Outback Steakhouse, and I'm just overcooking fillets and whatever, sirloins every night.
I thought you were the director of salads.
Well, I did do.
Okay,
I worked all the stations.
Okay,
I was the jack of all trades at Outback. I even worked the Bloom station a couple of times.
As Lance would say, you were the Army Swiss knife. Of the Outback Steakhouse franchise.
That's
in
right.
Bloomington.
And it's so funny, the things that you remember. I remember vividly driving back to Connecticut, and I had decided I'm in Ohio somewhere in the middle of nowhere, and I'm like, no, I'm not going to live with my parents. I had all my stuff.
Right.
And I decided, you know what, I'm not going to do this. And I did end up going to Connecticut and spent the week, but then ended up coming back, which was not the original plan. I was originally just going to drive back and stay there.
I think I had forgotten that detail. I'm sure you have shared that with me, but it's 17 years ago.
It's funny how life works, right? And I called you on the road from my, I don't know, Motorola flip phone or whatever I had at that time. And we talked about doing the internship, and then you had mentioned part-time hours being available. Yep. And then I was like, okay, this is what I'll do. I'll go back. I'll work for ESPN 950, intern/part-time, and continue to overcook steaks. And that was my life for 05, 06, because all of my roommates, I still was active on the lease, were seniors at IU that year. And then, of course, that developed into me hosting the midday show while and Brad Walker-Merca, who will be on the Monon Bell coverage. Correct. Once again, a DePaul grad, a former football player there, did the afternoon show. And then eventually it wasn't very long. Was it maybe 6 months that we did the afternoon show together? It might have been more like 4 or 5.
I think it was 4 or 5 months.
It was that winter into the spring of 2009.
Correct.
That you and I co-hosted The Zone. And that was That was a lot of fun. I remember going down to that place on the south side. We did a lot of shows.
Right. Yep.
We had a couple of other
like
spots.
setting up your gear on a pool table. That was basically like that became like our corner of the restaurant to do a live show on Mondays.
We're plugging into ATMs and fax machines just to make sure our radio signal gets out.
Those were free phone lines. That's how you have to bring your own cash to the bar. Of
course.
Yep.
Indiana Downs in Shelbyville, I remember going to, but it's fun to look back on now, but you realize just through the passage of time how long that's actually been.
I had hair back then. It's amazing how that works.
It's wild. So to have it all kind of come back full circle and today be the culmination, this emotional crescendo of that moment is great. But it's honestly great to host with you because I don't think we've done that since then.
So literally our last radio show together was, and I remember this date because it was my last day on 950. It also happened to be my 10th wedding anniversary.
Oh, wow.
May 8th of 2009
Yeah.
was the last time that you and I did. We've had some, obviously, we've had guest appearances and stuff like that. But I think legitimately sitting down and doing like the entirety of a show together like this, it's been 13 and a half years.
I know we did a farewell show for you, but I don't really remember. I actually, I remember, I think Ron Hunter called in.
I've got the CD of it, actually.
Okay.
Yeah,
so I do remember we set up a couple of special guests to call in. I do remember that, but I remember doing a show in Cincinnati at Great America Ballpark the month
game
before.
of the season,
and I think that's when you told me that you were leaving.
Yeah.
And that was
I let Marty Brenneman deliver the news.
Yeah, I think that's what it was. Yeah.
If Joe Nuxhall was still with us, he would have said, Greg is rounding third and heading for home in terms of his days on 950.
It was Mr. Redlegs just giving me signals, and I had to try to figure out what he was trying to tell me.
Or Jeff Brantley flashing a ring and sounding like Foghorn Leghorn. One of the two.
Let's talk about the rest of the NFL in Week 9. And it's so funny. My least favorite week of the year in the NFL season is after Week 3, because after 3 games, you feel like, oh, we've got it all figured out. We know exactly where everybody is. Remember what we were saying about Jacksonville after 3 weeks?
They were great.
And now, they've lost 5 straight. And I do wonder, Rake, and you got to give it some time to play out, should we be nervous about Trevor Lawrence and maybe not being what we thought he was going to be? I mean, I guess that'd be a good thing if you're a Colts fan, but he does not look as good as advertised.
I was nervous about him last year when Jacksonville played in Indy in October because he was awful.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he was missing simple and basic outs and short hopping throws. Then he looks great against the Colts end of last year, beginning of this year. But now that you know whom his coach is in Doug Peterson, again, a Super Bowl winning coach, a guy that has a quarterback and offensive coordinator's background, and the fact that, he's got some relatively decent pieces around him and he's looking average to below average, yes, it's safe to be worried about Trevor Lawrence at this point.
And it's wild that this division, it keeps happening year after year where you keep waiting for some of these franchises to take a step forward. I know the Colts trying to get out of the middle and up to the top. And for Jacksonville and Houston, it seems to be them just trying to get out of the bottom, and they can't.
Right.
Because now you look at it, they have the 2 worst records in the AFC, and Houston
the Texans
losing again.
Right. The Texans appear to be legitimately potentially the worst team in the National Football League, which is kind of what we expected. You have this god-awful tie the first week of the season, and you go, well, maybe they're not so bad. No, they are that bad, which means that was, again, like a loss for the Indianapolis Colts and not really, like a tie from back in week number 1. But yesterday at home, they are playing a good Titans team. Not a great Titans team, but a good Titans team. But they're playing a Titans team without Ryan Tannehill. First start he's missed in over 3 years. You talk about a conservative game plan. Hand the ball to Derrick Henry, wash, rinse, and repeat. Hey, Malik Willis, don't lose the football game. And he didn't. They won that game on the road 17-10. So in an NFL where there's only a couple of teams that are really good and a couple of teams that are really bad, and everybody else is somewhere in the middle, the Texans are amongst the bad.
Best thing I can say about Tennessee is that they handle their business.
Yep.
You watch them and you think to yourself, why is this team good? And their talent doesn't blow you away, but they take care of their business. They don't beat themselves. They make all the layups.
Does NFL Films still do like a 30-minute highlight of like every team, like a half hour on each team season? Has that gone the way of the dodo bird? Does that actually still exist online somewhere?
Like runs on ESPN2 at 2 in the morning in April. I don't think they do anymore.
Because imagine being the guy that was in the room having to think of 32 different team mantras to name the season. And if you're the Titans, well, it's going to say AFC South champ at this point. But, literally like their 30-minute video would be, don't screw it up. Because they have done that to 5-2 so far on the season, and they have a 2.5-game lead on their closest competitor, which would be the Colts, and they own the tiebreaker. So with 9 games, or for their case 10, because they've already had the bye, with 10 games left to play, they're off. And literally, don't screw it up, and they'll get a home playoff game out of it.
Looking over on the other side of the coin at the NFC, are you surprised how essentially all of the prominent teams that we expected to really contend, Rams, Bucks, Packers, are all really struggling?
Very much so, and especially the Rams, just because they are such a veteran-laden team. And I realize you could say, well, I don't think I can repeat exactly what the Rams say about draft picks, but we know the general idea, and I've agreed with them. They have been in a position, go get veteran players, and you'll plug and play everybody else. I think that was the right move, but maybe you finally hit that point where guys have gotten old on that football team, because Stafford certainly, looks that way at this point. But, we thought the NFC West would be a great division, and we thought, the one team that won't be is the Seattle Seahawks, who looks as good as anybody else right now in that division, the Seahawks. The NFC South appears to be taking on AFC South-like qualities.
Yeah, awful.
We all thought that the Falcons were going to be one of the worst teams in football. Well, they're leading the NFC South after 8 weeks. But it is the NFC East that maybe not you being a Northeastern guy, but that we all bemoan so much of, dear God, why are you showing them on my television screen? Well, they're getting shown on your television screen this year because they're all really good. Because the Cowboys are finally playing up to expectations. And the Eagles, who, in a bad conference, were the last playoff team last year that would not have come close to making it in the AFC, but made it in the NFC. Well, now they're one of the best teams in football and the lone unbeaten team left in football. And the Giants, a franchise we've all laughed at for the better part of a decade, I'm not sure how good they are, but they're very Titans-esque. They tend not to screw it up. They go out there and win the football game when it's given to them. So, yeah, we knew nothing about the NFC going into the season, and we kind of, haven't gotten to the Vikings yet. They're 6-1, and they deserve to be given some conversation with as well. And the scary thing is, Derek, those teams that I just rattled off, they all appear on the Indianapolis Colts schedule in the span of a month from November the 20th.
They'll get into the teeth of the schedule here very soon for sure. And it's frustrating, Greg, because the threshold of being good this year, the bar that you have to cross, really is just not very high.
No.
There's really no reason why the Colts can't be the Giants or the Seahawks or the Vikings or so many of these teams that have the Titans, so many of these teams that have winning records and are in playoff position.
But that's also part of the reason why, to bring the conversation back to the Colts, we haven't dropped the T word on the program today, and that's tank. And, was the Sam Ehlinger move a white flag move for the season? And my answer is no, and it's that reason for a couple of ways. One, that's not in the lexicon of Jim Irsay. That's not what he's about. Secondly, again, even at 3-4-1, I think the division is a foregone conclusion at this point going to the Titans, but you're still in the wild card chase.
Yeah.
Now, you lose the next couple of games, now we're having a different conversation about that. But opportunity is still there for the taking, just because I can count on one hand the number of teams I think that are really good football teams. The Bills are in that group. I think the Eagles are in that group. I think the Cowboys are in that group. Everybody else is just average. They've managed just to beat other average teams. Or again, when the other team gives you an opportunity to win the game, you go and take it. There's not a lot of great in the National Football League right now.
And the issue for the Colts is that we always talk about, hey, they've got the opportunity to do this or do that, and they never end up taking that opportunity, it seems, in the last couple of years, where it's right in front of them for the taking, and they can't take it.
Now, I did notice something. I noticed how you pronounced issue, and you pronounced it like you normally would in conversation. So does it have to be like a public affairs matter for you to go with the NPR pronunciation of, and I can't do it the way you can, so I'll leave it for you.
If we're talking about like real life news, or if I'm just kind of being stupid, I'll say issues.
Oh, okay, got it.
Yes,
okay,
but normally
but
the way to say it
is as we're in a conversation. Got
issues.
it. Thank you.
Issues.
Okay, just because I'm a fan of the show, by the way.
Many of the clients that you see on this show are because of Greg Rakestraw, and that includes our next segment and WGU Indiana and our buddy Corey Elliott. You hear us talk about all that WGU Indiana can offer for you. How did this partnership come about with the show, Greg?
Corey Elliott and WGU Indiana is one of our longest-running sponsors on the ISC Sports Network. It dates back to about a year before Query and Schultz. So WGU Indiana has been with this program in terms of Query and Schultz since day number one, but they have been a part of our high school football and basketball coverage now over the parts of 4 years. This year, they had this wonderful partnership with Warren Central, and so we have highlighted that in our Warren Central broadcast, and we frankly expect to have one more Warren Central game from a football standpoint coming up next week. I know on the bottom of the screen it says Cathedral and Lawrence Central. We're kind of planning on Warren Central and Center Grove being our final television game for football on MyNDTV, but it's really through Corey Elliott that it obviously has been in this chair for Jake. That's last time that you needed a substitute teacher, and for all of our sanity, because of the Astros being in the World Series, I thank you for not inviting Corey to be back on the program today.
I wasn't going to do it.
No.
It would just be so awesome if Philly won that series.
Corey is now very much pro Colts now that Sam Ehlinger is the quarterback.
That's right. He's got
because
the
of his
jersey
passion for all things UT. He and Katie both were rocking the number 4 jerseys yesterday at Lucas Oil.
He loves Texas football. That's
Indiana.wgu.edu, by the way.
It wasn't all doom and gloom for the Colts yesterday at Lucas Oil Stadium. It was a great celebration at halftime as there was a new inductee to the Ring of Honor. But Rake, unlike Marvin Harrison, Peyton Manning, Edgerrin James, I wasn't entirely certain that a Ring of Honor ceremony was ever going to happen for Tarek Glenn.
Yep.
So the fact that it happened at all, to me, is the sage move of the week because I think the Colts did the right thing in honoring one of the most underrated pieces of the core of those championship teams.
Not that I am disagreeing with you, just to offer a second viewpoint on Sage Move of the Week. I think the way he played, you could say Sam Ehlinger was the Sage Move of the Week, getting him out there. But I am such a big fan of Tarek that I will wholeheartedly agree with you. And again, on the post-game show last night, I said this is, the most underrated piece from the 2000 Indianapolis Colts. And so I am ecstatic that he gets his, just due. And for all of the attention we pay to the quarterback position and the last 20-year history of it, Manning, Luck, and now the inherent problems that have come in the last 4 years since then, think about the run of left tackles this franchise has had since, and we're in that position now where that's not the case, and we're seeing the issues with it. But even if you predate Tarek Glenn, Chris Hinton's in the Ring of Honor, okay? Tarek Glenn's in the Ring of Honor and should be. At some point, Anthony Costanzo will be in the Ring of Honor. So are those guys the level of players that a Manning was, or even for a brief time a Luck was? Probably not. But are they guys, that are anchors to your offensive line, are going to take care of business? Absolutely. And as a fellow fat guy, Tarek is a monument for fat guys everywhere, okay?
Yeah.
When you walk in that locker room, there are guys that are absolute specimens. And let's use his bookend tight end at right tackle during those days. Ryan Deem, 6'6", 330, 5% body fat.
Yeah.
Tarek would have different parts of him that were 5% body fat. He was just a wonderful, natural athlete. And as you've heard everybody say, for as good of a football player as he was, he is an even better person. Just a wonderful representation for the Indianapolis Colts. And again, I'm so happy. This dates everybody on this conversation. It's been 16 years since he played for the Colts.
Yeah,
I can't believe that's the case.
Crazy.
But he absolutely deserved that honor on Sunday night.
84 to 2010, the Colts inducted 6 people into the Ring of Honor, including the 12th man, which they had to take out after the lawsuit. Since then, 12.
Right. It's one every. It's going to be one
it's
every
basically
year
every year.
So let's spin this forward. The next person to be put in the Colts Ring of Honor it's basically Colts homecoming at this point. Is what this turned into. Who's the next guy going to the Ring of Honor in 2023?
Vinatieri?
It could be
Vinatieri.
Vinatieri.
Removed enough?
Maybe. I actually put this question to Bill Brooks, Barry Krause off the air yesterday. And Billy Brooks was on top of it. He said Dallas Clark, and I go, yeah, that would make sense.
Yeah.
Dallas is now about 10 years removed from his playing days. The one thing I want to say is this, is that we're about to get into a different era where the Costanzos and maybe a Jack Doyle, maybe a Gary Brackett, perhaps a Bob Sanders, again, even though it was a shorter period of time, Bob was the defensive player of the year at some point. He would get on that list. I also want to make sure that we're including guys from the 80s and 90s.
Ray Donaldson.
Boo, that to me, that Donaldson, maybe Jeff Herrod,
Yeah.
maybe Dwayne Bickett, but to me, Donaldson is the best example.
That's an
from the
obvious
80s.
one. I mean,
Yes.
I'm really surprised that Irsay hasn't put his foot down and just said, hey, let's make this happen.
Right.
I don't know what's holding them back from doing that. And I was hopeful that Glenn's inclusion meant,
Right.
hey, okay, this opens the door back for Donaldson. I do wonder how they'll treat Costanzo in this and Brackett, because while they were fan favorites and they played basically their entire
Right.
careers here, they weren't Pro Bowlers. I know it's the Pro Bowl, right?
Right.
You know,
Cost-
whatever.
I thought that
Costanzo was a
I thought
Pro Bowl
Costanzo,
caliber player.
right, was just below that level.
And I do wonder how they're going to treat those guys.
It's the whole difference we talk about. Is it the Hall of Fame or the Hall of Very Good?
Yeah.
I get that. I think Costanzo should be in that group.
And I think there is an element of this that's fan related. The reason
Of
why I've
course.
been a proponent for Sanders is because you can make the argument he was the second most popular Colt for a very small window.
Yep.
But the second most popular Colt.
No doubt.
2000. Do you remember we're going to go back down memory lane in the 950 days. We did an event at like Castleton Mall with
remember
Perry
this.
Ellis. And I had to MC, and we had Bob Sanders there,
Yep.
and he had won Defensive Player of the Year. And it was crazy.
Yes.
Like the amount of people that were there. Like I was completely nervous and totally overwhelmed. And that was kind of the apex of Bob
But
Sanders.
thankfully, you had taken out your tongue ring and you were not wearing your backwards
Yeah.
visor at that point. So
Yeah,
you were
there
in
was,
good shape.
there was no
Yep.
tongue ring for that
Right.
there. Yeah. That was
The chin goat was still rocking, but,
That's
but,
right.
but everything
Yeah.
else was good.
Burned all the photos, Greg, so they're all gone forever.
Forever etched in my mind.
We're going to shift to hoops. Pacers actually look pretty good. What's supposed to be a rebuild, I mean, they're still in the middle of a rebuild, don't get me wrong, but some of their young players really standing out here in the first couple of weeks of the season. We'll talk about that. And more eats, our Hoagies and Hops Hoagie and Hero
Yay.
of the Week when we return. It's Corey and Schultz. Don't go anywhere here on the ISC Sports Network.
Hey, I'm Jeff Saturday, and my favorite thing when I was a professional football player was Indiana. The Hoosier State always made me feel like family. That's why I trust Indiana's hometown mortgage lender, Bailey & Wood. This family-owned company not only gives back to the communities they serve, but also with their 5-star customer service, they can close on your dream home in days, not weeks. So remember, Indiana, you can always get your mortgages at a snap with Bailey & Wood.
Hey, Jeff, how does this look? Yay!
Not bad, bud, but let's stick to mortgages.
McCulling in time. Oh, no! It's good. This one is good. There you go. Wow, Dawson makes a great catch. Spin, win, 3, bury it for Leland Walker. Tie the game they do with the dunk by Malik Edmonds. What a play. Oh, my goodness. I feel a little momentum starting to fall Ellen's way. That is Wrestler! Wrestler! Whoa!
Welcome back, Corey and Schultz, presented by Bailey & Wood Financial Group here on the IC Sports Network. Thanks to Sean Walker and Greg Mash, the Presidente, slumming it down with us here.
El Presidente, El Perfecto. That's right.
Yeah, helping us out today as our crew getting a much-needed day off after a crazy run of events that we've had here on ISC the last couple of weeks.
Yeah, literally, I mean, we do this show every Monday in the worldwide headquarters, our studios, but we had remote events each of the last 6 days. So our stretch on ISC, we went to Kokomo, thanks to our friends Coca-Cola of Kokomo, and you're seeing it as you're watching on the television channel. You'll see that show the next 3 weeks, chronicling and previewing the upcoming season for some of the best teams in and around Kokomo. Marion volleyball, Marion basketball, then the standard 3 football games on a Friday night, UIndy football, go Hounds on Saturday night, and then yesterday, 3 games simultaneously from Grand Park, our friends, the Gridiron Gang, Robert Mathis, Dan Muir, and of course, Lance Scheib, part of our ISC Sports Network staff. So we pretty much told Jordan and Vince and the dearly departed, he's still with us, Alan Hughes, guys, don't show up to work on Monday.
Yeah. Stay home.
Right. I mean, again, this is more of a Jake Query reference. This is probably just getting into the fringe of like you being on the planet. This is kind of like the year of the Dukes of Hazzards where Bo and Luke weren't on it. Yeah. This is a Coy and Vance Dukes of Hazzard production.
I mean, to kind of put it in perspective here, Jordan and Vince worked more hours last week than Jake works in 2 months.
Probably. I was going with 2 years.
Yeah, well, I mean, you might actually be right about that. But we're still going to dock his pay.
As he is in Barcelona right now.
It doesn't matter. Let's get to our next segment, Rick.
Right.
I know you've been waiting for this one.
Oh, man.
We're both Midtown residents, both lovers of Hoagies and Hops, 42nd and Boulevard.
I'm not going to fight you on hashtag Midtown, by the way.
Hoagiesandhops.com. I have right here in my left hand Greg Rakestraw's favorite hoagie
man.
on the Hoagies and Hops menu, and it is the Pit Twist. So we have here delicious Black Forest ham, mayo, provolone, house slaw, and I forgot to put the Hershey chips.
Right.
I need to put those on mine because I forgot to do
So there
it.
is some assembly required in terms of this sandwich as I chew into a microphone to drive Jake nuts, I'm sure. I actually stumbled into this sandwich. So we talk about partners here on ISC. I discovered Hoagies and Hops because of Tony Polizzi. Now works for the Pacers, but was our point of contact with Marian University as we have grown that partnership expansively in the last 3 years. And we are filming a series of features over there about 2 years ago. And she goes, hey, I'm going to order in lunch for the crew. There's this place I go to called Hoagies and Hops. It's fantastic. I just randomly go, hey, give me that sandwich. And it's the Pit Twist because I'm not a huge potato chip connoisseur. I'm certainly who says, man, I love me some coleslaw. Like Pat Sullivan says that for Slawfest. Nobody else.
No, for the most part.
Another hashtag Midtown reference for you. But the combination of those that I had on that sandwich, I'm like, this thing is, I'll clean it up from what you would say. This is a really freaking good sandwich here. And so then I got to go back to this place. And knowing that was right as Query and Schultz and ISC were starting, I'm like, I got to sit down and talk with her about getting on the show. But then I would get distracted by all the food when I would walk in there, and she is always so busy. So thankfully, you had the gumption to go talk to Christine and get this set up. And so now they've become a wonderful partner of ours on the show. So much like Office Space, I celebrate the entire catalog.
Oh,
but
so good.
But if there is one sandwich that is my go-to sandwich, it is the Pit Twist, and these tips are about to explode, so you can take it from
And
there.
happy 7th anniversary to Hoagies and Hops. My relationship actually goes back with them to, they were essentially in like a coat closet at a brewery down on Dorman Street. And what was the name? Flat 12.
Yep.
They were with Flat 12
They
down
were
on
with
Dorman
Flat
Street.
12? Were they really?
Yes, that's where she had her first window.
Oh, my goodness.
And my wife is the one that told me about it because Ashley knows I'm a big enthusiast for East Coast. And you just can't get this out here outside of what they do. And she's like, let's go in there and try it. And I went in and got the Hog Island and just immediately was hooked right after that. But 7-year anniversary, they just celebrated it last week at Hoagies and Hops. So congratulations to Christina, Donnie, and the rest of the crew. They're fantastic.
So I will say this. So one of the times I'm in there, there's a gentleman by the name of Tom Crawley, and most people won't know who Tom is. If you're a Butler person, you know who Tom is. Tom was kind of Barry Collier's right-hand man for many years at Butler. Tom is a Philly guy. Tom coached up and down the East Coast in college basketball. I walk in, I see Tom in line, I go, okay, all right. If somebody from Philadelphia gives this a stamp of approval, I know this is good.
Yeah, and there are a lot of Philly. I know Matt Conti
Absolutely.
goes in there, frequents Hoagies and Hops. There were actually, strangely, a lot of Philly people in Indy.
I went on Friday without thinking about it being game one of the World Series, and the Phillies are in it. Place is packed on Friday, like at about 1 o'clock or 1:30. And I'm like, okay, this is a good way to celebrate. And since I'm the soccer nerd, the Philadelphia Union are in the MLS Cup final coming up this weekend as well. So I have promised Christine that there's going to be some Philadelphia Union gear on the way for them to celebrate.
Yeah, get ready. We've got a lot of MLS final content.
Yes,
coming
and that ends 30 seconds of soccer.
Yeah,
we do have
final
60
segment
seconds
of
of
the
Ball
show.
State Cardinals, but that's the end of 30 seconds
Stay
of soccer.
tuned for lots
I promise
of MLS.
You.
Coming right up, I promise.
I'll tell you what, instead of talking MLS, I'll just keep eating my sandwich. You go right ahead. We're good.
My hero of the week, Bennedict Mathurin. Wow.
Yeah.
Season averages, 21 points per game on 43% three-point shooting, but to get over the 30-point mark, 32, he's coming off the bench. He has been not only as good as advertised, better than advertised. He looks like you can make an argument, and again, it's through 7 games. He has been the best rookie this season. And I think the feeling was, Rake, that there was an upper crust of 3 or 4 guys, like Banchero and
he was the
Holmgren,
next guy, right?
And he was on the next tier.
Yep.
And now you watch him play, and you think to yourself, why can't this guy be a franchise player?
Don't we still make the mistake of going with the big guy first? Even with the hard-earned lesson from a guy who, I'm not kidding, I saw at Hoagies and Hops a couple of trips ago, in Greg Oden, who is now on the staff at Butler University. In other words, like if the tiebreaker is the deciding factor, we go with the taller guy. Chet Holmgren, Paolo Banchero. Again, I think he's going to be a good player. Holmgren's already hurt. I think he's still going to be – I mean, think of how we are fawning over the next surefire number 1 pick next June, Victor Wembanyama. I hope I'm close pronouncing his name right. Think of a cool way to tank for, no victories for Victor, I guess is the way that we're going to go with that there. But we always go with the taller guy first. And goes, okay, let's go to the guys that are of the next size. Mathurin almost seemed like he was the best of the rest. Like he was the best consolation prize. Hey, he's going to be a solid player, not a star. Well, you know what? It's 7 games. I know.
Yeah.
He just might be that star, and that's exactly what Pacers fans needed, that little shot, that dose of hope. He has been fantastic. And you know what also I like about him? He's kind of angry. The phrase now is he's got that dog in him, right? Well, we showed a picture of him from the Bulls game, just playing a little defense under DeMar DeRozan. Well, the way he played defense at the end of the game of that Bulls game wasn't great. I know you took to Twitter to talk about it. But you know what? You kind of need one guy to be that angry jerk at times, in your locker room. And we can have the debate or discussion whether you want that to be your star player or be your role player, whatever that is. But you need that little dose of crazy, that little dose of angry that holds everybody else accountable in the room. I think Mathurin just might be that guy.
It's his confidence.
Yeah.
That LeBron quote from Summer League.
It's great.
And everyone's like, what is this guy doing? And it's just that's how he carries himself. That's how he's wired. And it's exciting, Greg, because the Pacers haven't had this in either of our adult lives.
No.
They haven't had, say what you want. Yes, Paul George ended up being a fantastic player. Reggie Miller was a great player. Those guys weren't stars as rookies.
No.
Not even close. The Pacers have never had a first-year player do what he's done through the first 7 games.
Let's point out that Reggie Miller wasn't that guy as a rookie either. He was a guy that was coming off the bench. Remember, because Chuck Person got here right before Reggie Miller did. And so Chuck was the guy until about 3 or 4 years in. Was kind of like, hey, I think Reggie's going to be the guy that leads this group and not Chuck Person going forward. So, again, the sample size is ridiculously small. So let's remember, even with back-to-back wins on the road, let's remember that, hey, this is about development, this is about growth, and this is about finding those happy moments. We're in a happy place with this team right now.
Yeah.
Let's enjoy it.
Yeah, and the games don't matter. If they go 30-52, who cares? It's just, are these guys progressing? Are they growing and evolving?
But I will say this. I don't think there is a problem. In other words, like Pacers fans, don't get upset if your team wins too much. Okay? It's about the young guys playing together and building that young core. If that's 25 wins, so be it. If that's 35 wins, hey, that's not bad. Don't oh, man, we're hurting our draft stock. No. You're teaching a young group how to play together and how to win. That's the most important part of this season.
Yeah, and the other guys, besides just Mathurin, Halliburton, double-digit assists that he's averaging so far. Isaiah Jackson had a big game the other night. It looks like it's coming together.
I saw one metric, and I forget which source it was, that had Halliburton as the 4th best player in the league so far.
I did see that too, on Twitter or something like that.
Right,
yeah.
And that's way above
Is it
my
efficiency or
sure, it's way above my pay grade as to how that works. I just know I think they got the point guard. I think they got their shooting guard or small forward. I think they've got at least one piece as far as a big. And the other thing is too, we're going to keep having this conversation as long as they're kind of hovering around 500. Hey, do you trade Buddy Hield? Hey, do you trade Miles Turner? And the answer is, and it's something you don't often say in sports talk, I don't know, to be honest with you. Again, your trade value is going to kick in at some point in time in February. It isn't even November yet. Let's see how these guys do the rest of the way.
I do think Hield is going to be – Hield is a perfectly useful NBA player. I think the problem for him has always been the contract. But I do think that is a guy that they're going to end up moving. Turner, who knows? I'm done predicting Miles Turner is going to move.
Somebody will gobble up because everybody needs a shooter at this point. Everybody needs shooting.
100%.
You would think, again, unless this surprising pace of play continues, talk to me on February 1st as where the Buddy Hield's going to be here or not.
Got a little bit of college football to get to. Both Indiana and Purdue were on bye, so we won't really discuss them. But Notre Dame with a big win, and we'll look around the rest of the college football slate. Also, our quick hits and still to come, Bite or Bowl Bleep.
Can I finish my sandwich now?
You can finish your sandwich.
Thank you.
Query and Schultz here on ISC Sports Network. Stick around.
Nice snap.
Mortgages and snap. Duh.
Bailey and Wood, a lending hand for Wish TV Sports.
Other universities didn't fit into my life.
They said I'd have to quit my job to go to school.
They said it would take me 4 years to graduate. They said I have to take tests when they tell me to.
They said my degree would cost a fortune.
But I didn't have to listen to them.
Because I have a university that listens to me.
Tests on your time, courses on your time. Graduate on your time. WGU, the University of You.
Hey, AC.
Nice snap.
Mortgages and snap. Duh.
Bailey and Wood, a lending hand for Wish TV Sports.
So, not a whole heck of a lot to talk about when it comes to at least the in-state college football weekend with both Indiana and Purdue on bye. But I do think, Greg, some interesting things happen that affect, well, not really Indiana. Nothing affects Indiana at this point, right? Their season is over. But that certainly affect Purdue as Illinois keeps finding ways to win and is in firm control of the Big Ten West. The caveat for Illinois is that, unlike Purdue, they have a crossover game against Michigan coming.
Right, yeah.
So you lose that one, and then if Purdue was able to win the Cannon game, then we can have a conversation about Purdue going to Indy. But
hang on a second. Do you know off the top of your head, and clearly the answer is yes, you just dropped it, you have the Illinois-Purdue rivalry trophy committed to memory?
Yes, because it is the least impressive, crappiest rivalry trophy that exists.
Is that the pew-pew cannon that you have?
That is the
gotcha.
pew-pew cannon.
Okay,
it is like this little baby cannon, and it's on it's on a flat
which is very fittingly
surface
for the Illinois-Purdue rivalry.
And they've been playing each other for, I don't know, like 200 years or whatever it is. But it is, there are really like keg of nails and like there are cool rivalry trophies.
The old brass spittoon.
Yeah, and this one it falls well short.
Like something you would see on Pawn Stars for $40?
Yes.
Okay,
but the cool thing is that game, Purdue-Illinois, matters. It actually matters.
I can't actually ever think of an Illinois-Purdue football game that would be considered a meaningful football game.
Me neither.
Because Illinois has been one of the most random programs where they typically have been Indiana's neighbor in terms of the basement of the Big Ten, but then you have these random peaks where they're all of a sudden a really good football team. The Kurt Kittner, the Lloyd that was the receiver, Brandon Lloyd, Aaron Moorhead, that group like 20-ish years ago. Then 5 years later, they won at Ohio
Rashard
State.
Mendenhall and went to the Rose Bowl. And
They had their peaks.
Wild.
Crazy.
They went to the Sugar Bowl when I was a freshman at IU, and they went to the Rose Bowl, and I think pretty much every other season they were like 6 wins or fewer.
Yeah, easily.
They were like pretty much every other season.
Now, shouldn't their one loss count as 2 because it's Indiana?
Man, it should. You know what? They had to. Did you watch that game? I don't know if you had another game going on that night.
I did. It was Thursday.
It was a Thursday night.
Thursday
right?
night. So I had something going on, or was it Friday night? No, Purdue was Friday night, or Purdue was Thursday night.
That's
Indiana
right.
was Friday night.
Purdue, Penn State.
So
Thursday.
it was opposite high school football. So we had LC and Lawrence North that week on ISC, and when I got home, I watched the game, and the IU offense was so bad in the second half. Until the final drive, I'm like, I can't watch this, and I see on Twitter all this positive reaction. I'm like, wait, they actually moved the ball, and they did, and won that game. So
it was one drive. I mean, they got Illinois completely outplayed.
Sounds
them.
very familiar to what we talk about on Sundays around here, does it not?
It
was one drive.
It was really
one drive was good enough.
That won that game. IU's closing schedule, by the way, coming out of the bye: Penn State, at Ohio State, at Michigan State, and Purdue.
Good luck with that. Last couple, they'll be competitive.
I mean, the over/under for wins in those games would be what, 0.5?
Yeah, the season.
If they
let's
win
go one
more,
because Michigan State's in the same boat as they are at this point. So let's say it's
one
at this juncture.
Notre Dame, meanwhile, you talk about a weird season. They go to Syracuse in really a game that wasn't as close as the final score indicates. Started things off with a pick six and never really looked back at beating Syracuse, who probably was playing a little over its head.
Sure.
And really could have beaten and probably should have beaten Clemson the week prior. But, a lot of people rag on Notre Dame for not joining a league. And I like to think that eventually maybe the Big Ten would be the league that they would join. But perhaps if they would have their way, it would just be the ACC because they destroy those teams. They've won 24 straight against ACC opponents. They're 29-1 against the ACC in the regular season since 2017.
I'll admit to you, I may be like the 1% of the population that is apathetic about Notre Dame. In other words, they don't inspire this hate.
You don't hate them?
I don't inspire this love. Again, we had them on 950 off and on for a few years, so during that time I kind of cared about them. That's been long enough ago where I don't. What happens to me with Notre Dame is once they get out of the national championship picture, because they don't have that conference affiliation to fall back on, I tend to go, okay, next. And so they are so off the radar for me. So happy they won, but they're still a 3-loss football team, right? Yeah. They still have losses to Ohio State, Marshall, and Stanford, right? So I want to pat them. Hey, congratulations, guys. You won today's game. Good for you. And now good luck playing in some random bowl game on December the 27th. Good
Poinsettia Bowl.
Sure. Which again, for
7-5 Notre Dame.
For Indiana, you'd be like, Poinsettia
Bowl.
Bowl.
Yeah, you'd love it.
Wonderful.
Yeah, you'd take it for sure.
The famous Idaho Potato Bowl. Love it. For Notre Dame, you're like, yeah, let's talk about next year's recruiting.
Yeah, they've never felt like really connected to Indiana to me. Like Notre Dame has always been its own entity.
Right. It's like Washington, D.C.
Yeah, people want you to talk about, well, they're in Indiana. Yeah, I mean, kind of.
No,
like, I guess.
Michigan's right over there, as you well know, having family from that area.
South Bend is very different, I think, doesn't really connect to and the region itself doesn't.
And
really
let's face it, there were a lot
state.
more Subway alumni in this area, in the 80s and early 90s because, Indiana had gone through lots of struggles up until Bill Mallory had gotten there. Purdue had this dark period after, the Spoilermaker days in the 60s, Greasy Keys, et cetera. And so on a Saturday, Notre Dame was a national team. Notre Dame was in Indiana. The Colts and Pacers weren't what they were then now. The difference that we feel about Notre Dame in this state compared to what it was 3 decades ago is mammoth.
Yeah, and you can see, looking at Notre Dame's track record, why that's kind of contributed to that here recently, at least in the 21st century. Let's talk about Love That Play. Now that we're talking about how much we don't care about Notre Dame, guess what our Love That Play is? It's the Pick Six.
We love the Love family, though. Hello, Chris and John.
That's right. They've been in business for over 100 years. Yep. In fact, since 2020, love-hvac.com. If you're adding a heating or cooling problem, give them a shout today, and their trained service technicians will take care of you. I have a Love HVAC unit in my house. Rake has one in his house, so this isn't just one of those sponsorships that, whatever. We use them. And they're right in the neighborhood with us.
317-353-2141.
I see their vans all the time. Their office is down. Would that technically be Irvington?
Yes.
Okay.
They're closer to downtown than, say, Irvington proper.
Gotcha.
But they are not in #Midtown.
No. East 10th Street.
But they service #Midtown.
Like I said,
amongst the best.
I see their vans all the time.
Yes.
All over town.
That's a real place, by the way.
I would love to know, and obviously it doesn't happen a whole lot. It's kind of like the leadoff home run of baseball, even though baseball is a weird game compared to football. It doesn't have the same kind of flow. I'd love to know how many teams that started a first series with a pick six went on to win. I would assume that the winning percentage would have to be north of 80%, right?
Skyrockets, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, this was the first play of the game for Brandon Joseph to start things off, but it just immediately gives you that jolt.
Right. Especially when you're on the road.
Mm-hmm.
It completely takes the home crowd out of it and deflates them.
So a nice win for Notre Dame, who now almost certainly will be bowl eligible. I mean, hell, they've got Boston College and Navy still left on their schedule, so you would hope that they're going to be bowl eligible.
I think they're in, yep.
But also, it allows Notre Dame fans to, I think, talk themselves into being competitive against Clemson this week. Whereas if you would have lost that game to Syracuse, probably you'd say, they got no chance.
And again, this is a good Clemson team. It's not necessarily a great Clemson team. So absolutely Notre Dame's got an opportunity in this game. No doubt.
So why not? I mean, Jake will be texting me about it all week. Once he gets back stateside,
what do you think? DJ Uiagalelei?
I don't even try.
Just DJU, is what everybody says?
I just go
and then
DJ.
The backup that came in and won the game for him a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah.
When DJ was struggling.
Yeah, I don't even try with that one. There are certain ones that I have gotten Tagovailoa well, now I just
You got it.
up.
Tagovailoa, you got it.
There are certain ones that I've kind of come to learn, but that one
the all-time local one of those is a kid that played at Ball State, young man from Franklin Central. So next time you see Lance Scheib, ask him about this. His name was Sunenguru Rasunenguko.
Wow.
Thankfully, everybody just called him Go-Go. He played for Franklin Central, Ball State, and briefly, God rest their soul, the Indiana Firebirds.
That's unfair to have both names be like that.
I would like for Sean to try to type out phonetically on the screen.
Yeah.
Sunenguru Rasunenguku. Good luck with that.
Yeah,
Enjoy.
I think he's
You
not
get
gonna
that on the day
one.
you run the graphics and not me.
Let's get to our quick hits. You had mentioned this earlier. We were talking about the AFC South, but quick hit number 1. Derrick Henry has tied the all-time 200-yard rushing mark.
Wow.
So he's done it now 6 times. Do you want to guess who the other 2 that have run for 6 times? 6 different times they've rushed for 200 yards. Only been done by 2 other NFL running backs.
Walter Payton?
Not one of them.
Really?
Yeah. But they were guys that you would have expected. It's not like Chris Johnson.
Barry Sanders?
No, also not Barry Sanders.
I suck. Eric Dickerson. Who would it be?
OJ?
Duh. Okay.
AP.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, those would be your next guesses, right? I mean, we're
sure.
talking about
Of course they would have been.
the best of the best. Henry, 32 carries, 219 yards, 2 tuds, and wow. I mean, he's impressive. That's for sure. 200.
Now,
yards
I also believe, at the risk of gimmick infringement, that he passes Eddie George for the most tuds, as the parlance of the show would be, in Titans/Oilers history. So, in other words, Eddie George had already passed Earl Campbell for most touchdowns in Titans history. And I think that yesterday Derrick Henry surpassed that.
Well, and the cool thing about Henry, too, is that he's actually had some staying power.
Yep.
Like, I just mentioned Chris Johnson. Chris Johnson was here and then he was
CJ2K.
But Henry has really kind of kept that up.
Well, let's put it this way. Here is the ultimate sign of respect to Derrick Henry, because it's going to be tougher and tougher. We can, shift this to baseball and say, pitchers in the Hall of Fame. How nobody's getting 300 wins.
Yeah.
Nobody's going to get that many strikeouts because of lack of innings pitched. How do you have a Hall of Famer? You would say the same thing about a running back in the NFL. To me, there is no question. Derrick Henry's going in the Pro Football Hall of Fame whenever his career is over with. That's how good he has been now for a long enough period of time.
Yeah, we're coming up on and the NFL doesn't do the counting stats like baseball, but
Right.
we're coming up on 10,000 rushing yards, which is a good mark. He's been an All-Pro twice. He was the OPOY in 2020.
Offensive Player of the Year.
Yeah, I mean, God, 70 rushing touchdowns. Wow, that feels like a lot.
Yes.
So yeah, I'm totally with you there. I think as well.
By the way, I will serve as a translator on the fly when Derek goes all acronyms. Something I just type them on the
Jake's the
computer
one that
most
hates
weeks.
that.
Exactly.
Sticking with football, but on the college level, Tennessee quarterback Hendon Hooker has emerged as the consensus favorite now, betting favorite for the Heisman Trophy. He jumped ahead of C.J. Stroud over the weekend, so he's now even money in Caesars. Stroud is plus 180. Blake Corum, the running back at Michigan, and Caleb Williams, the transfer from Oklahoma at USC.
These are all guys
3 and 4
that probably not the young man at USC, but the other guys will control their Heisman destiny by how their team does in the month of November, in conference championship games in December, et cetera. So this will certainly play itself out as Tennessee is suddenly back on the national stage for the first time in about 15 years.
I wish I had it. It just popped into my head. I think Tennessee's on some ridiculous, they've scored at least 30 points in 18 straight games or something.
Does that include a bowl game to Indiana?
Yeah. Well, I don't think it goes back.
Right.
It doesn't go back that far. It goes back through last year, but they've rattled off something like they've scored 30-plus points per game. They possess the ball real quick, and it's a crazy offense.
That Ball State loss doesn't look so bad now does it? Yeah.
No, I mean, because they look like a national contender for sure. Quick hit number 3. This isn't actually a news story, but I just wanted to look in the camera and say this. Today's Halloween. We didn't dress up for
No.
it. I just want people to know, and Rake and I both we've got a couple of years apart, but we grew up in the 80s and 90s when there were news stories about razor blades being in apples. Now it's, oh my God, people are giving your kids THC gummies and fentanyl-laced Skittles. No one is giving drugs to your kids, okay? No one. Greg has 2 kids. I have a child. The only time I've rifled through his candy is to decide what I want to eat.
Right.
I'm not inspecting each piece. So please, this Halloween, be safe, but be safe when it comes to crossing the street and making sure your costume isn't too dark so other cars can see you. Those are the things that you should be worried about, not people handing out drugs to your kids.
Because again, as residents of #Midtown, Derek and I live close to the Mardi Gras of Indianapolis Halloween, and that is the corridor that is Meridian and Washington Street.
Yeah.
I live a block away from Washington Street, so we kind of live on a side street. It's nice and quiet. I'd imagine your street gets very busy.
It does.
Where you live. If we go a block over, it is an absolute friggin' zoo.
Yeah.
So, yes.
It's wild.
My concern is much more of not, inspecting the candy is, hey, don't get hit by that crossing car because there's thousands of people that are walking through the neighborhood.
What we always do is hit on the neighbors, say hi. Okay, here's our son. Here's his costume. Then head over to Washington, Meridian, Penn.
Right.
Over there.
Because they're giving like full-size
candy bars, the whole deal. Yeah.
I'm not sure I can say the full phrase. I know you're the one that is sworn on the show. It's kind of the A blank tax that you play for living in the neighborhood. You better bring the full-size candy bars.
100%. You got to do it.
Yep.
We'll wrap up next with a little buy it or Bo Bleep and bid you adieu for another week here on the Query and Schultz Show, ISC Sports Network.
Hey, I'm Jeff Saturday, and my favorite thing when I was a professional football player was Indiana. The Hoosier State always made me feel like family. That's why I trust Indiana's hometown mortgage lender, Bailey & Wood. This family-owned company not only gives back to the communities they serve, but also with their 5-star customer service, they can close on your dream home in days, not weeks. So remember, Indiana, you can always get your mortgages at a snap with Bailey & Wood.
Hey, Jeff, how does this look? Yay!
Not bad, bud, but let's stick to mortgages.
Other universities didn't fit into my life.
They said I'd have to quit my job to go to school.
They said it would take me 4 years to graduate. They said I have to take tests when they tell me to.
They said my degree would cost a fortune.
But I didn't have to listen to them.
Because I have a university that listens to me.
Tests on your time, courses on your time, graduate on your time. WGU, the University of You.
Here on the ISC Sports Network. Thanks to Greg Rakestraw for filling in for Jake Query. Jake is back stateside next week as we recap likely another Colts loss.
You know, Derek, I have always been a fan, as I'm still clearly have some of the wonderful buns from Hoagies and Hops.
We're shoving them down our throats
trying
during the commercial break.
Swallow this as I'm making a point. I've always thought, shorter breaks are the best way to go because it's more content for the show. Now, though, I have underappreciated the lack of time you guys have to eat these sandwiches on the program. So this is the way to really attract new listeners. Coming next week, longer commercial breaks on Query and Schultz.
It's Hoagies and
You're
Hops.
welcome.
It's almost like I need the dipping water like Joey Chestnut has so I could just rip them in two and then dip the bread in. And then...
You would think as a fat guy I would respect that. No, God. Oh, no.
That's
Ruins it.
That's what I have to do.
Right.
To get that in during the short commercial breaks. You're right about that. But appreciate you coming by and moving from that edge of the studio to this edge.
We have also moved to very bougie, broad ripple-esque white mochas instead of a 44-ounce Polar Pop Diet Mountain Dew that Jake likes to rock on the show.
Yeah, he does like his Polar Pops, that's for sure. We forgot to mention Ball State. They've got a Tuesday night Maction game this week against, I believe
Kent State.
Kent
Is that
State.
right? Yeah.
Back-to-back road
Which
games.
you learned is an actual town in Ohio, by the way.
I did not know.
Okay, now
Ohio.
let's let people, because it's the substitute teacher
that.
edition. Yeah. Okay, you often try to play dumb at times on the program.
Never.
There are things that you do kind of in character, part of the brand. There was this. I think I know you well enough. You legitimately did not know that Kent, Ohio was an actual place.
No, I thought it was like, the founder of Kent State University was Bob Kent. That's what I thought. Like, I had no idea.
Right.
In my defense, Ball State is after the Ball family,
Correct,
right?
yes.
So,
and because I'm sure all of you have encyclopedic knowledge of every Query and Schultz program, this dates back to our last visit to the Shoe a week ago this past Saturday. And by the way, for the right price, Query and Schultz will come broadcast from your family event. Please reach out to me at Greg Rakestraw on Twitter. And
weddings, bar mitzvahs.
But we give you a discounted rate for the bar mitzvahs, honestly, as well. So basically, Derek came up with this idea. He's looked at like the Mid-American Conference standings. That is Ball State like the only place that's not named after a direction or a town. And we're like, well, there's Miami, Ohio. And then Derek starts rattling off like all the places we're like, hey, buddy, that's Bowling Green.
Bowling Green,
Ohio is not like it's not like represented by a law firm. The law firm of Bowling Green.
I knew there was a Bowling Green, Kentucky.
Bowling Green, Ohio. Yeah. Kent, Ohio is an actual place, not a very big place, but it's an actual place. So anyway, just to keep all of you abreast of the situation.
Did not know that. In all of your travels, did you ever do an event from Kent, Ohio?
I have had Kent State. IUPUI played Kent State in Columbus in a 8-team tournament start the year. The day, in fact, George Hill broke his foot in that game.
Oh, geez.
In the beginning of the 05. We got back to 500. That was a good season without George. But I've had Kent State. I've never been to Kent, Ohio. I've been to Youngstown, which is not far, and Canton, which is not far. I've never been to Kent.
I saw a stat that George Hill is in his 16th NBA season, and I almost broke down crying.
It's not that much. It's close. This is his 15th NBA
Okay,
season.
well, whatever. Yeah, I mean, still,
Right.
like, you know, it's crazy to think
and
that
I
it's
remember
been that long.
His first game was November of 2004 for IUPUI. It was the day after the Pacers brawl.
Wow.
So that is when George's career started, and now he's entering his 15th year in the league.
Incredible.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, what a career he's had. It's been an unbelievable career.
Chirp, chirp.
Time for our friends Chateau Kitchens for Bite or Bowl Bleep as we wrap up here. If you're new to
Let's
what
put
we
the hat
do
on,
here
right?
with Bite or Bowl Bleep, you can. Sure.
Yep,
Here,
yep.
I'll grab one too.
Oh, good. There you go. Now,
Thank
I'm not
you.
sure these fit my gigantic dome, but I'll
See,
do my best.
they're adjustable, so I think it should be.
But I'm the
should be
reason
okay.
it says one size fits most, Eric. It looks good on you.
ChateauKitchens.com, at
Doesn't look good
Chateau
on me.
Kitchens on Instagram and Facebook for before and after pictures. Ryan was just over at my house the other day. We're talking about doing our basement with Chateau Kitchens, and they've been a tremendous partner of ours on the show, and they do excellent, wonderful work. So give them a call today or go into their showroom up in Carmel and see what they're all about. Here's what we do. I give a statement, Rake and I go back and forth whether we buy it or it's Bowl Bleep. You ready for statement one?
Only if you take the hat off.
Yeah, it's probably a little
Yeah,
much.
there you
right?
go. That's what.
Probably a little much. Statement one, Sam Ehlinger will be the Colts Week 1 quarterback starter in 2023.
I buy it. I buy it.
Wow.
I really do. Just because, again, I think they will win enough games the rest of the way to not have a top 10 pick in the NFL draft, to where there is not kind of that obvious guy that you go get as a quarterback. And also knowing you have Ehlinger under contract for 2 more years after this one.
Mm-hmm.
You say, all right, if he's good enough to play, you can now spend money at other places and invest in other positions, or maybe you're trying to do some repair work from places you've invested in and hasn't worked so far. So, yes, I think Sam Ehlinger will be given every opportunity to win the job over the next 9 weeks, and I think he's the starting quarterback next year.
Devil's advocate a little bit.
Sure.
Would Irsay give an ultimatum, hey, no more Band-Aids? You know, the Ehlinger move was just made because we were done with Ryan. Let's turn the page and let's invest in somebody young and let's go for it this offseason.
It is potentially that he does that, but I think Jim feels the same way about Sam that, say, Chris and Frank feel about Sam. And knowing that Sam is already a very well-liked figure in the locker room, again, those are the intangibles. The most important thing is, can he play? He's played 1 game. Yeah. He looked good. Let's let this play out over the next couple of months of the season. So if it doesn't go well the next 2 months, are the Colts in that situation? Certainly. But, again, I think the kid can play. I think he'll be the starting quarterback next year.
I'm going to say Bowl Bleep, and it's tough because I don't have a lot to back up my position, because then you ask, well, who will be the Week 1 starter in 2023? And I have no clue.
Let me tell you 2 guys I don't think it will be, Matt Ryan or Nick Foles.
Yeah.
It's either Ehlinger or somebody.
I agree with you there.
Draft pick, yeah.
I don't think that he'll play enough to warrant that he's going to be the starter. I view him as your QB2 of the future. That's who I think he is. And what I'm worried about here is that we're going to get like a Brissett-type season where he's just good enough to be like, okay, yeah, maybe this will work. And I don't want to do that all over again with a limited player.
As the person that has broadcast until yesterday every game that Sam Ehlinger has played in the National Football League, when I saw him last year, that's what I thought he was. I thought he was Chase Daniel. I thought he was 10 to 15 years a backup in the National Football League. And there were times even this preseason I thought, Sam is so well liked, and Sam clearly knows the offense so well. Maybe actually the guy he is Kellen Moore, a guy that walks away from a career as a backup to go be a coach in the National Football League or a college coach. I thought that was maybe the possibility for Sam. Now I kind of think he could be a starting caliber quarterback in the National Football League. Certainly hasn't proven it yet, but that possibility
He'll be given
there.
every chance.
Exactly.
He'll be given every chance to see what you have, and that probably was the right decision for the Colts to make.
Yes,
hey,
it was.
let's see what you have.
And let me say this publicly, okay? You got to take the injury out of it. Even as bad as Ryan had played at times, I was surprised they made the move when they did.
Yeah, me too.
But given how Sam played, I think it was the right move.
Yeah. Statement number 2, World Series going on. We didn't even mention that on the show today. Astros are a dynasty with or without a second ring. Buy it or Bob?
They're a dynasty. And I say that, and I'm as guilty of bagging on them for the asterisks, the trash can scandal, etc. For Altuve, I'm thinking wearing a wire at some point in time. I think that's all feasible.
Yeah.
But now they've gotten through that. Now they've had pieces leave, like Springer, Correa, Cole, and they're still here.
Just replace them.
Right. So, yes, for as much as I want to give them stuff for how they have handled their business at times, man, they're really good. So, yes, they're a dynasty.
I mean, 4 World Series in 6 years.
Yeah, it's crazy.
It's wild.
Yeah.
And I guess it depends on how you view the 90s Braves. I view the 90s Braves as a dynasty-level team because
Dude, let's bring it back home. You talked about it on Twitter yesterday. For anybody that was critical of the Colts winning just one Super Bowl during that run, we all have a much greater appreciation for that bunch now, don't we?
For sure.
When they, and you've heard me say this on the air so many times, they literally fell out of bed and won 12 games every year for 7 years. That doesn't happen. And I know you're a big proponent of this too. You don't have to win the championship to appreciate your team had a good season. You're going to have 95% of fan bases pissed off if that is the case. I may not like them, but the Astros are really, really good.
Yeah, there's no question about that. 106 wins, another pennant. I mean, it's been incredible. And they're still the heavy favorite to win this World Series.
Now, that being said, I'm rooting like crazy for the Phillies.
100%.
I want to see him win.
Schwarber, I mean, it's a great story. Yeah. Final one here. I don't know where you align on this. I know where Jake does, but buy it or Boldly, peanut butter cups are overrated. Okay, see, just from that look, I kind of know where you are. Yeah.
Time to pick up some tomatoes. There are 2 Halloween candies that are given out in the Rakestraw household. Fat Boy here doesn't buy Halloween candy until the weekend before, knowing I will literally grab a piece every time I walk by. We hand out things that I like. We hand out little baby Butterfingers, and we hand out a variety of Reese's peanut butter cups. If I had a top 10 of things on the planet, Reese's peanut butter cups would probably be in that top 10. So do not ever besmirch Reese's peanut butter cups in my presence again. Like literally, I think I'm a well-spoken person. I'm like frothing at the mouth so mad that you brought that up.
Well, yeah, I was going to answer this, but instead we'll just wrap up the show for today. So thanks for watching Query and Schultz. Have a happy Halloween. Thanks so much to all of our great sponsors. You see all of their swag in front of us. Bailey & Wood Financial Group, Lou Malnati's in the Lou Malnati studio, Chateau Kitchens, WGU Indiana, Hoagies and Hops, Love Heating and Cooling.
Who just signed on for 6 more months of sponsoring Query and Schultz. So thank you, Chris.
Am
Thank
I
you,
missing
John.
Anybody? I think I ended up getting
Ball State University.
Ball State University as well. And our friends Chirp Chirp.
Lou Malnati's.
Good luck to them. Tuesday night Maction. Thanks a lot, Rake.
I'll look forward to my next guest hosting shot in 2 years.
And we'll decide how much pay to dock from Jake Query for missing another show. For Greg Mash, Sean Walker, and for Greg Rakestraw, I'm Derek Schultz. Have a great week. This has been Query and Schultz here on the ISC Sports Network.
Nice snap.
Mortgage is a snap. Duh.
Bailey & Wood, a lending hand for Wish TV Sports.
Other universities didn't fit into my life.
They said I'd have to quit my job to go to school.
They said it would take me 4 years to graduate. They said I have to take tests when they tell me to.
They said my degree would cost a fortune.
But I didn't have to listen to them.
Because I have a university that listens to me.
Tests on your time, courses on your time, graduate on your time. WGU, the University of You.
Hi there, I'm Jake Query.
And I'm Derek Schultz.
And we do Query and Schultz on ISC Sports Network. And Derek, unlike Ted Lasso, we have a 3rd season.
That's right. Season number 3 right now, iscsportsnetwork.com.
Are they doing a 3rd
You can
season
see
on that show?
episodes on Comcast 81 as well, Mondays at 7:30. I'm talking about our show, Jake, this beloved show that people tune into every single week. Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, Facebook, so many ways to watch Query and Schultz every Monday, 7:30. Tune in and hang out with us.
And you don't have to be a goldfish. You'll remember everything we say. Ball here. Harris scores. With 9 And an and one. Fly ball. Out of here.
Your life is on the go. Now your viewing habits can be on the go. With the ISC Sports Network app, your team is at your fingertips. You can download years' worth of content from the ISC Sports Network library. High school, college, special events, weekly and monthly shows, wherever you find your favorite app. And you can always find out more information at iscsportsnetwork.com.
The drive, the take, fouled, and it goes!
Lobbing it to the back of the end zone. They're going to say it's a touchdown!
Left foot gets through. Goal for Vargas. Hamilton will score!